I am Malcolm Childs.
And I am James Skiffins. And we are Just Making Conversation.
The show where we discuss the ins and outs of the model making hobby that we both love so much.
From the greasy sprues to the gloss coats and everything in between, we are going to just make conversation.
Remember, there are other podcasts you can listen to.
Plastic Model Mojo.
The Scale Model Podcast.
Plastic Posse.
On the Bench.
Model Geeks.
If you enjoyed the podcast, consider leaving a review or 5 stars, as it promotes this podcast to more people to enjoy.
Also, consider tossing a coin to your podcaster on Patreon. It just helps us make content for you.
In this episode, we will be just making conversation about the dangers of the hobby, the safety and the risks. From serious illness to a paper cut, how has your health been affected?
Is there really a danger? Should we take precautions? Do you enter your spray booth with every orifice and inch of skin covered? Or do you not give a monkeys?
So fill in your risk assessments, sharpen those blades, and inform your next of kin as we discuss health and safety within the hobby. If you're ready,
Yes.
I think we should start this podcast with a little bit of a disclaimer in terms of health and safety. I don't claim to be a doctor. James doesn't claim to be a doctor, correct?
Oh, no, I'm not a doctor. I have a stethoscope, but that's for completely other purposes.
I don't even own a stethoscope. Yeah, we're going to talk about health and safety today, and neither of us are qualified to give advice. Neither of us are qualified to tell anyone what to do, but we certainly are qualified to give opinions.
Oh, yes. Yes, I have a certificate for that.
Yeah. Please don't take what we say as gospel, but please do enjoy it as a piece of entertainment. My paints and glues have toxic warning labels all over them. My super glue, for instance, has one that looks like a star coming out of someone's chest, like a superhero. I don't even know what that one is. I'll have to look. This super glue right here says warning.
Does that make you a superhero?
No, it's like I can't actually read it. It's so small. But the sign is rather big. I can't even read it. I can't even read it. I mean, it probably means don't drink it. So
yeah, more likely. Yes, don't do that.
On the front, it says danger: bonds skin and eyes in seconds. It's an eye irritant. Keep out of reach of children. See cautions on the back of panel with electron microscope, because that routing is tiny. And yeah, everything I have on my little hobby bench has a warning label on it. You know, apart from the brush soap.
When we make our models, do we always read the instructions? We quite often flick through them. The first bit of advice we can give you is please double check the safety element of your paints, your glues, etc., and what the symbols mean, because it's a good thing to know.
Yeah. And
more to the point, the information arms you. Take the time and trouble to pick up your paint. And the reason I say this at this point and this moment, I was talking to Malcolm not that long ago about paints. And it came up that a particular paint in which I use had got a warning on it, which I was completely unaware of, which Malcolm pointed out to me because he had seen it. So, yes.
Atomizing Vallejo, wasn't it?
It was atomizing model colour, yeah.
Yeah. Was that same label on Vallejo's Air as well, Model Air?
I would guess so. I don't actually own any, so it would be difficult for me to say. I would suggest that probably yes.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm just looking. Funny enough, I have some new paint in my collection, and I've just realised that all of the health and safety on the paint is in Japanese.
Okay. Maybe it's only hazardous to not English-speaking countries. I thought there was a ruling that it had to be in at least 2 languages. No, maybe not.
Possibly.
I know on the Tamiya one, they used to have like a whole leaflet on the top. Do you remember that?
Yes, they did. They did, yeah. That was partly for the fact that their bottles, if I remember, the labels were in Japanese. And the way around it, rather than relabeling all the bottles, they stuck a leaflet on the top.
They come in other boxes as well, don't they? I guess they are sold primarily as separate items. So you have to put all of the label, or all the information on that tiny little bottle.
Yes.
Which must be quite tricky. Same with airbrushing, atomizing something. I think the danger is you're breathing that in, it's going to go in your lungs. And that's why we're told to wear approved masks and use a spray booth by a very large window if you're able to.
Yeah, I mean, when you're atomizing paint, you really, for best practice, you need an extractor. To be honest.
Yeah.
But in an enclosed space, you need a way of extracting that air away from you. You can get an extractor, a hobby extractor, which has got a handle on it so you can walk around the house with it if you want to. But that has a hose that you can stick out a window. So you don't need to drill holes in walls and all that sort of stuff. You can do. Mm-hmm. You don't have to. And they go less than £100 for those. I think in the UK they're around about somewhere between £60 and £80 off the top of my head. Or you can go for something a little bit more substantial, and the money obviously increases. Bench fence comes to mind, for example. Very good product. For those sort of things, they are more of a, if you have a space for them and you have a dedicated space where you can build a spray booth, you can do that out of foam card, or you can do it out of something a little bit more substantial, depending on what you want to do and how permanent it is in that particular position.
Yeah, the one I have is that portable one that you were mentioning with the sort of plastic, the hose that just falls out the back.
I think we've got the same one.
Mine's been extended with a bit of cheeky tumble dryer hose.
Oof.
And when I am feeling in the mood, I go out to the back into the garage and flop the hose out the door. I thought I was going to do that without. So
there's nothing wrong with you flopping your hose out the door, Malcolm. It's fine.
God,
we knew it was coming, dare I say, right from when you started the sentence. So that's fine.
Yeah. Talk about hoses. Let me get in there. Let me butt in. Yeah, that's what I use, and the hose just lays across the floor. The bad stuff gets sucked out in front of me, but also I'm sat by the door as well in an a well-ventilated garage, let's say. And I also wear a mask as well, and I ask my kids not to come anywhere near me. I don't do spraying much, but I notice when I use a spray can, rattle can,
yeah,
the spray and the atomization in the air is 3 or 4 times worse than it is out of an airbrush. And yes. I just think it's because the amount that comes out at once. You have no control of the PSI, obviously, on a rattle can. So I posture that is perhaps more dangerous than using an airbrush. I don't know, of course. I'm not an expert.
I think you're right to a point. If you're using rattle cans in an enclosed space without ventilation or extraction, it's not a good idea. It's not good for your health at all. And you tend to find when people do that, if it's an exposure time that's quite long, they generally come out of the room coughing anyway. And that's a good sign to say that something's not quite right.
I don't know if it's right or not, but if I think to myself, I can start to smell this paint, or, I can sort of taste it, then obviously those particles are going inside my face where they shouldn't be, and I shouldn't be tasting paint. So it's time to stop, or time to turn up your spray booth.
When you're using a mask, I don't know what mask you have, Malcolm. Paper mask, disposable masks in which you use, probably in your day-to-day life. Some people will use those. Now, what I would say to you is, I'll give you a challenge, actually, is get your airbrush and spray your model. Don't put the airbrush up your nose because that defeats the object. Spend a moment without a mask and then blow your nose, and you'll find that the paint's in your nose. Pretty simple. Now, I wouldn't personally advise you to use that sort of mask. I would suggest to you, if you're going to do mask wearing, you need to get something that's of good quality and something that gives you an overall, over your nose and mouth, sealed environment and filtered.
Yes.
But the other thing you wish to bear in mind as well, because we are doing health and safety, is remember airborne particles don't just go up your nose, they go in your eyes. So you do need to wear some sort of eye protection, be it some disposable glasses, a mask that involves coverage of the eyes. But contact lenses don't hack it. That's not covering them.
No, no, not at all. The mask that I have is it's a 3M mask, and it's got the reusable filters you can bolt onto the sides. You can plug into the sides. I can't remember the name of it, but it says 3M on it. Reasonably sure that it's okay, and I can't taste the paint. I can't smell the paint at all when I'm using it. It doesn't come with goggles though. It's just kind of comes with a hat thing that kind of straps around the back of your head and then on the front of your head. I don't know why it has a hat thing. I haven't got a blowhole, so I don't know why. If I did, I'd just cork it up, But yeah, the eye thing, that's a good point. That's something I don't think about.
Yeah, no, I think it's something that's often forgotten, to be honest. I mean, I've got a mask, the same sort of thing as you have, from a company from JSP. They're not a lot of money, and you've got your carbon filters on the side. Sorry for the little bit of rattling. That was me just getting the mask out to be able to quote that to you. With the mask and your extraction unit is to remember to change your filters. Do it often. Do it as a matter of routine. Yes, it can be a cost in which maybe you don't want to spend, but remember that mask, that filter won't last that long. So it certainly won't last you a year. But the other thing that I learned was that when you have your mask, when you're not using it, how do you store it?
Mine sits on a shelf in the garage. And it sits there. It doesn't have a throne or case.
Okay, well, mine goes back in the bag it come in. It's a resealable bag. And the reason being is that stays in a sealed environment. They're particles in which you've used your mask for, obviously still there. They're not going anywhere because they're trapped in the filter.
Ah, right.
Stops dust particles, etc., getting into your mask from everyday life. So it extends the life of your mask a little bit longer.
Yeah. Do you wear a mask when you smoke?
No, it's very difficult because when you put the cigarette in the hole in the front of the mask, it sort of defeats the object. But yeah, it sort of makes sense. When you've got an item, it will gather dust. I mean, I look around my hobby room now, and there is dust. It's not that I'm not very house proud; it's just there is dust. And what you do is when you put your mask on, you see any dust that's inside of your mask, you immediately breathe that all in.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, thank you for that tip. I will put it into a sealable container of some sort. I do have them in the garage, so I should use it.
One thing I would also suggest with your extracting fan, have you replaced your filters on your extractor?
Yes, I do, yeah. You can tell that they need going because they don't go blue anymore. They start to go grey or white, I spray painted Concord a while back now. And the spray booth was just white. And so, obviously, the whole filter had to be changed. But yeah, no, I do.
The reason I asked that question is because I changed mine relatively regally.
Regally?
I do it with a crown on my head.
A little celebration and coronation.
Oh, yes. I have the corgis come over. I do it regularly. And I tend to go with the assumption that when you're spraying your model, you might be spraying, I don't know, a green for your tank or whatever. And you're going to get some on your filter at some point. But the way I sort of look at it is once the colour that it was when I put it in is no longer visible, that's the time to start thinking about changing your filter. Now, be aware that the material that's used for filters, there's a lot of different types and specs out there. So don't go for the cheapest possible one because you tend to find it's not the right one and doesn't work sufficiently enough for you.
Also, with the actual venting system, isn't there a special fan that doesn't have a spark, like a sparkless fan, so that if you are spraying anything incredibly flammable, there's no chance that you're going to catch fire?
Majority of the spray booths are designed in a way in which that shouldn't happen. It's very rare that it does happen. But if you're using very high flammable material that you're atomizing, there is the chance that could happen. So I think most of the hobby booths that you can buy have got a warning not to use certain products, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will blow up. There is always a possibility of fire or explosion if you're using the chemicals that achieve that outcome. And they are ones in which you want to be doing outside. Don't do them with an extractor. Do them outside.
If I could, I would always airbrush outside just because the light is better. But I would do it because, a bit safer, I guess.
And something also to bear in mind as well, as you brought the explosion side of it up.
I didn't mean to incite explosion or fire hazard.
But I bet you, somebody listening right now will go, oh, yeah, I do that. If you do some spraying and you choose to spray or atomize a product that has got that warning on, that flammable, etc., just bear in mind that does include the cigarette that's dangling out of your mouth.
Yes.
And any other scented candles that you might have on at the time. But you'd be amazed how often that can happen, where someone has a naked flame or a cigarette and decides to atomize something that's flammable.
Yeah.
I'm laughing. It's not a funny thing because it does cause a great deal of discomfort. Unless you're very, very unlucky, it would be a ball of flame that would just maim you. God, how dark are we getting? Yeah.
Don't do it, please. Don't do it.
No, don't do it because, it will interfere with your looks.
Yeah. Put your scented candles out before you hobby. That's what we're saying.
Yes.
I think that, naked flames and smoking, I think, are the highest causes of fire. So, fire being the cause of fire. Of course it is. But, you're right. Don't do it. That's what we're saying, isn't it? Be careful in all the things you do.
And I mean, that obviously would also cover glue, strangely enough.
Right.
Because technically you should have a naked flame while you're using your Tamiya Extra Thin.
Is that right?
You can smell it. So if you've got a cigarette next to it,
yes, yeah.
It possibly won't ever happen, but I'm sure it has somewhere.
That'd be an interesting video, wouldn't it? Someone light and see how it is. Please don't do it.
No, don't do it. We don't want to see it, but yes, I do. I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I might even cut that bit out of the podcast. Here's the video I made. I lost my eyebrows, and now I would like my face back. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so naked flames in your hobby room probably aren't the best thing to do.
I've noticed a lot of people wearing gloves and things like that when they're doing their airbrushing on a lot of YouTube videos because they're concerned about the chemicals through their skin. The same person licks their brush to get that tip, and obviously, some chemicals are going to be ingested. It's going to be dangerous in some way, but there is no better way, I don't think, than getting a point is that in licking, and I do it, and people shouldn't. It's
one of those things that a lot of modelers do. The funny tagline, isn't there, on a cup, which is, this is the water for washing my brush. There are those occasions where people pick up the water that they clean their brushes in and drink that. But, licking your brush, etc., is quite common. It's quite common. And I have noticed, funny enough, I've actually changed slightly the way I do my painting. I use a slight chemical in my water for cleaning brushes now, which I didn't used to. I used to be just water. So now, not only do I ingest a little bit of the model colour, which doesn't really increase my complexion at all, but also some of this chemical that's in the water. And that's bad, obviously, really bad. Don't do that. But the good thing is, for me, is that it tastes horrible. It's put me off doing it.
Yeah, put something in there that is just, ugh. Maybe put some Marmite in it or something.
I see, I like Marmite. And
that's an interesting fact. When we come to the pub quiz later on, does James like Marmite, yes or no?
I feel like I've unleashed a layer of myself.
One of those onion layers have been released.
Yes. I think the thing to remember is that, you talk about licking your brush and the way really to get your mindset into the thing. Yes, it does help you give a point, but really cleaning your brushes and keeping on top of that would aid you in prolonging the life of your brush and keeping the point, and also not overloading your paintbrush.
Yeah.
Will help you avoid that, having to do that sort of thing. But the thing to remember is do you lick your airbrush?
No, I don't. Jeez. If I did, I would pierce my tongue with a needle, and no, God, no. No, I don't. No, who licks their airbrush?
Well, hopefully nobody. But that's generally the point. Is that you wouldn't lick your airbrush, so why would you lick your brush? I know there's hairs involved and all that sort of thing, but
don't put any paint in your body, in any orifice or pore.
Now, this is something I've only recently found out. Now, we mentioned glues a little minute ago. I just want to go back to that. With the super glue, you will find that has chemicals within it that, if you're not very careful in the way you handle it, you can actually become allergic to it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes, prolonged use of CA in a confined area should be avoided. So, realistically, you should be thinking along the lines of atomizing paint along the same lines as super glue. Now, I can guarantee you 95% of people listening, including myself, wouldn't take that into account.
Are you talking about atomizing super glue? Are you talking about being careful with super glue?
Thinking along the same lines of safety as you would for spraying your model with paint, you should be taking the same sort of precautions with your super glue.
I can't imagine myself doing it.
No, I can't imagine myself using a mask, but the truth is it is something that could be that dangerous. So you need to be really, really careful. And the fumes can also irritate your eyes, which is something we mentioned earlier. At the very least, put some safety glasses on or something to cover your eyes at the very minimal. If you're doing a lot of super glue work. Now, obviously, I'll be honest, I don't do this, and I really should. At the very least, open your window or turn your extractor on. If you've got the ability to turn your extractor on a low setting, so it's taking away the fumes, you don't generally have a pot of super glue on the side and it's open for ages. It's normally a very quick dib-dab and done in it, really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's something you need to really be careful with super glue.
Cool. Good tip. Thank you for that. Speaking of super glue, then, the other danger, obviously, is sticking yourself to something. Have you ever stuck yourself to a model?
Accidents with super glue. Yes, I've had a couple. I've had a couple where I've thought that I may have stuck my finger and thumb together.
Yeah.
Done that a couple of times. And that's where I've been holding apart with my finger and thumb and trying to glue them together and then go, done it! Hang on.
And how did you get it apart in the end? Did you use any chemicals to help it?
No, luckily I didn't have to seek medical attention or find a debonding agent. I was okay. But again, that's something you need to be very wary of.
Nail polish remover, I'm told, is good.
Yes.
Acetones or something, isn't it, to remove it? I've not stuck anything to myself, thankfully. I've dropped it on my clothes, which is a nightmare because it doesn't come off. This particular T-shirt that I'm wearing has a small blob of super glue on it that's just annoying. It's still there, so it's really good super glue. I mean, you see it in A&E, you see it on the telly. People have got an entire hand stuck to something. And obviously that super glue is meant to be bonded to skin. That's what it's designed for. So anything that's going to bond to skin is going to be really tight, can be really, really dangerous, especially if you can't get the bonding agent to the area to remove it. But also the chemical reaction of it turning to a solid produces quite a lot of heat.
Yes.
That's the other thing as well. If you spill an entire bottle of it, hit something that's going to kick it into being solid, there's a lot of heat going to be there, and that could be dangerous in burns and things. There's a video on YouTube of a chap with a bucket of water, and he just pours a bucket of super glue into it, and then he's surprised at how hot it gets. It's an interesting video, actually. Kind of makes a kind of weird paste thing. Yeah, that's the other dangers of super glue, sticking yourselves to things. Using the plastic glue. Have you ever stuck plastic together that you shouldn't have done? Like stuck something to your desk? Or
I've had the extra thin bottle tumble over the cutting mat. Devastating.
I hate that. It stinks, doesn't it? It's so strong and evaporates so quickly.
But I've generally touch wood, I've been pretty good with glues. One thing I will say though, now I am reading this from something that's on the screen, so bear with me. So it says about 5% of the population can become sensitive to CA fumes after repeated exposure, resulting in flu-like symptoms. It may also act as a skin irritant. Inhalation may trigger asthma. Now, I knew the asthma bit, but I didn't realise the other bit. What I just said, flu-like symptoms. That's quite weird, right?
Well, it's an irritant, I suppose, isn't it? It irritates your sinuses. I guess that's what they mean. Or do they mean like dizziness, headaches, and wanting to drink soup?
Well, flu-like symptoms would be all of those, and headaches, etc. And the reason I wanted to make sure we said that was because I think of numerous occasions where I've spent the day making models and come away feeling like, I've got a cold coming. I feel a bit rough. I don't understand why. I've not ventilated my hobby room sufficiently enough while gluing. Yeah,
well, it could be. Certainly could be. I know people have said that some of the fumes give them headaches and things like that. And so, yeah, definitely. Be careful, people. Please be careful. The other annoying thing I've found with glue is sticking my brush hairs together by forgetting I've got super glue or PVA or something nearby. Finishing touches to a model. You glue your handrail on and you think, right, perfect, it's glued on, excellent, right, I'll paint it. And you paint it and then the bloody brush sticks to the damn piece. Oh, Jesus. Not supposed to be a tuft there, but there is now. It's a bit like when you tufted your barbed wire.
Yes, yeah, it turned
into ivy.
Brilliant. It was completely what I wanted in the first place, honest.
Of course. Barbed ivy.
It's the same with anything within our hobby space, isn't it? Just remember not to rush. Rushing will create accidents, will create harm. So don't rush on any part of the journey through our models.
You see, if I was wearing an apron when I spilt super glue on me, I wouldn't have had that problem, and it would have gone on the apron. And then I would have a funky-looking apron with like lots of cool spills and stuff like that. But I don't. I just have loads of clothes with little bits of spills here and there.
You just look like the mad professor, wouldn't you, with that apron?
I just look generally grotty most of the time. It would be nice. Yeah, maybe I should invest myself. No, I should invest in it. I should invest in an apron. That's what I'm modelling apron. Maybe a leather one. That'd be cool.
Oh, I'm just not going there. I really am not. I'm going to resist any temptation of making any comment whatsoever of you donned in your leather apron.
Well, it's either that or it's like a lacy penny.
You really need to invest more in your dressing up box.
Get dressed up for modelling. Make sure that you're safe. But an apron, I would suggest, would be a good idea to wear anyway. Despite James's prejudices, I would say that it'd be good to wear the apron because if you drop a small part on your lap, it's going to be caught. If you spill something, your clothes are going to be okay, and it just generally looks cool. It looks like you mean business.
Now, it will sound like I'm mocking you, but I really am not. We all know that PE is quite an active part of our of our hobby, i.e. it pings off in all different directions without you meaning to. If you have an apron on, that could save you from losing your bits into the carpet monster.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, if you do like the idea of this, something that has been tried and tested numerous times by many people is at the bottom of your apron, if you attach some Velcro.
Right.
But then also attach some of the opposite side of your Velcro to the underneath of your hobby desk.
Uh-huh.
And then attach yourself to the desk when you're using your apron.
So it's a bib now.
Now, yes, sort of, but...
You mocked me for an apron and you want me to wear a bib.
Yeah, a lot of people go, why would I want to attach myself to the desk? Well, the idea being is, like Malcolm has attuned to, is that you have almost like a little tray now from your lap to the base of your workbench, which will collect your dropped bits. Yes, and it works. And by using Velcro, you're not tying yourself to a piece of furniture that when you get up, you end up being wrenched all over the place because the Velcro will give way.
You imagine that, taking the whole bench with you and all your models just fly everywhere. Oh, God.
It does. Apparently, it works very, very well. It's not something in which I have tried and tested, but I have a very good authority from those that have. They work great.
I think being as unfashionable as possible while making models with a visor on your head and attaching yourself with a bib to the desk is important. I think that there's no place for fashion when it comes to securing your photo etch.
Or pride, for that matter.
No, yeah, and hobby makers are labelled as nerds. I don't believe it.
Plus, also, your carpet monster will be quite distressed because it won't be fed so much. But, you know.
Hey, you can hold your tools and stuff in it. If you get one with pockets, you can got all your favourite tools in it, you know?
The problem is, Malcolm, you know as well as I do, you're not going to get away with that utility belt you want to use.
I've heard so many times that a blunt knife is worse than a sharp knife, or more dangerous than a sharp knife. You're using more pressure. You're kind of hacking at things if you've got a blunt knife. And I would always recommend using an incredibly sharp, deadly blade for any modelling you're doing, and to respect that blade as well, because it can be very dangerous. My father once sat on a scalpel, and it was a brand new blade. Believe it or not, be like a bear claw rip or something.
Yeah, it's more of a ripping action rather than a cutting action.
But anyway, I will edit that heavily.
I think the thing to remember with knives is there are so many different ones out there. I mean, I personally use scalpels, and I use scalpel blades, and there are absolutely hundreds of different types of designs.
Yep.
So you can get really quite excited with all that. But yeah, that's what I tend to use.
Thinking about it, I think we talked about this in tools, didn't we? Scalpel blades and things.
We did talk about blades and that, yeah.
But in terms of health and safety, I think a sharp blade is much more safe.
It is. But also remember, with the health and safety, storage of your knives are really important. I mean, I personally have a drawer specifically for my tools. My tools lay in specific grooves. The scalpel sits, the blade pointing away from me, and it sit with a sharp bit down, not up. But the other thing in which I would also recommend is that put your knives in your work area that is easy to get to, and you don't have to do some sort of strange contortion to get to it. If it's easy and straightforward, the chances of you knocking something or dropping it are very limited.
Good safety advice. And that's what we're getting at here, is not gospel. It's just tips and tricks to not chop your fingers off.
Yes. Now, there are many easy ways for you to mix your paint. The wrist action way. There is your cappuccino. Was it?
Yeah, cappuccino maker.
The frother. Or I have seen the use of a jigsaw.
Oh. Do you put the pieces inside the paint and shake it? Or
no, you basically attach your bottle to your jigsaw and then turn your jigsaw on, and the up and down motion shakes whatever you put on the thing. That isn't really what the tool was made for. So that might not be very safe. If that's the way you believe you can save money and the way that you want to do it, just figure a way in which is going to be the safest possible thing. Remember, some of your bottles are made of glass and may not react very well to being shaken vigorously by a jigsaw. But also you've got the opportunity for things to be flying around everywhere and all that sort of thing. So the reason I've brought that up, it's really just to emphasize the point. There are lots and lots of tools out there. Use the right tool for the job in which you're doing it.
Thinking about it, I have seen people using jigsaws upside down to shake their paints. It looks like it would work really well. You know, that's the other thing. I know it's very dangerous and could take an eye out, but I bet they have really smooth paints.
But see, this is the thing that always amazes me with those sort of things. Don't have it so the paint bottle is towards your face. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Hold it away from you, pointing down to the ground would probably be the best place I would suggest to put it if you've got to do it that way. I'm guilty for it as well. I can think of at least 2 times in which I've tried to use a scalpel to do something in which it's not designed to do and be completely mystified as to why the blade broke. And then, obviously, realisation of, aren't I such a fool? I could have had half a scalpel with my eyeball.
When we're short time, or we're just not thinking, or we can't be bothered to reach for that tool that's just a bit further over.
We all do it.
Yeah, that is the call of this podcast episode, isn't it? Is just be really careful because there's so many hazards. There's so many dangers. There's so many toxic things, flammable things, and things you can get allergic to and you can set fire to and cut yourself in half with. Be really careful. Please. We need the listeners.
Now, obviously, one of the other things in which we sort of touched on a little bit was eye care.
I've got an iPhone. Sorry.
Yeah, one of the things in which I want to also suggest to you, the use of magnifiers.
Okay.
Now, I think they're a very underrated item, but they're actually incredibly good for any modeller.
The headwear one?
Well, yeah, it could be a headwear one or it could be a lamp one. It doesn't matter. The point is, just remember with the magnifiers, they are, for me personally, my eyesight's not very good. So for me, it's a lifesaver because I wouldn't be able to see half the stuff if I didn't use them. But remember, if your eyesight's 1-to-1 and you want to keep your eyesight 1-to-1 for a long time, buy some. But you could buy the glass ones you can put on that make you look very funky. Or you can get the one with the light that's on a stand. They will reduce the amount of eye strain in which you suffer, or you inflict rather, on your body. And let's face it, if you've got 1-to-1 eyesight, you're not thinking about your eye straining because they work fine. But it doesn't take long for your eyes to suddenly go, do you know what, I can't quite do that anymore.
Yeah, I remember when I was told I need bifocals by the optometrist, I thought my life was over, to be honest. I thought that was it. While we're talking about magnifiers and magnification, the other danger there is setting fire to your desk. Because one of my friends used to model in his loft space, and they had a skylight where his desk was nicely situated under. And he had one of those kind of large lamps with a big magnifier in the center of it. Quite often he would say, "Oh, don't look at this model too closely. Don't look at the wing because that's where it burned. And you can see the line of where the sun went across the wing of my aircraft." He does have on his magnifier a little lid that you can cover that glass up with for exactly that reason. So just beware about where you're putting your magnifiers and if the sun's out, etc., because it could be a fire hazard. Rulers are sharp. I cut myself on one of them. There you go. Do you remember that?
Yeah. I do.
Right, are we ready to start this paper model, I said. I said, yes, we are. Right, I've got this nice metal ruler. Look how nice and just straight it is. Running my fingers across the edge. Started bleeding all over the place. That was a good start. Luckily, no blood went onto the model. But I can assure you more than blood, sweat and tears went into that thing.
Yeah, that was one of those builds, wasn't it? The paper model.
And we shall never speak of it again. Oh, paper cuts. Didn't get a paper cut for my paper model.
Yes. Now, what do you do with a paper cut?
Me, put a plaster on it. Or get my wife to put a dinosaur plaster on it.
Do you have special dinosaur plasters? I'm not going to ask.
I have kids, so
yeah, something in which I do. I'm not suggesting this is the best policy in the world, but something I do is I actually will often use a bit of lemon juice, which will disinfect the area.
What? No, it won't. It'll hurt like fuck.
Yes, it can hurt quite a lot. You're quite right.
It won't. If you use Dettol, it would, but not lemon juice won't disinfect it.
If you really want to go full with it, you could do a little bit of lemon juice with salt. Is the best option. But I generally just go with the lemon juice.
Do you have a tequila as well?
No, I always seem to miss out on that bit. I think generally the tequila the wife has because she faints at the sight of blood.
Yeah, oh, right. You could, of course, put super glue on there.
Now, see, this is controversial. Would you suggest that to be a good thing to do, to put your glue onto an open cut?
I didn't say I would. I just said you could. And I don't know how you're supposed to do it or how it was designed, but I think it literally is you wrap it with gauze and then you're supposed to then apply the super glue to that gauze, I think. And that's what holds the wound shut while you continue your combat, I believe. Don't quote me on it. I'm probably completely wrong. I'd love to. I might, after this podcast, find out exactly how to use or how super glue was used.
There's a lot of modelers out there that will say, dab a little bit of glue on it, it'll be fine. And I've always cringed at the idea, thinking, well, that I'm sure as a health and safety thing is probably the complete wrong thing to do.
I don't know is the honest answer. And because we don't know, I would say don't do it. Because again, we're not trained professionals. I'm not trained in anything. I only have a laminated certificate to prove my modelling prowess. So I certainly wouldn't believe that. I certainly wouldn't recommend putting super glue on. There might be people out there who say, yes, it's fine. That's what I do all the time.
As a rule, I would suggest to you that using glue on an open wound is probably not the right thing to do. Yeah, maybe I'm being a bit of a nanny state sort of person by saying that, but get a dinosaur plaster or a little princess plaster.
Yes.
And get them just for your hobby room. So we know when you've been at your hobby room.
Well, proper safety one would be a nice bright blue one so that in case you accidentally drop it into your model, we can find it. I did hear one of my friends had super glued his teeth together.
Would that be him trying to open the bottle and got some of the glue on his teeth?
That would make sense, wouldn't it? No, he was trying to hold two pieces of something together, and he put it in his mouth to hold it while he got something else. How you would use that amount of glue to be able to do that, and not only would you glue your teeth together, you'd glue your teeth together around the model you were gluing, so you would have that stuck in your mouth. Now, he did say maybe he had some residual glue on his tooth when he closed his mouth and it stuck. I don't know. I can imagine that was embarrassing and painful and very worrying, especially for his dentist.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what you'd do with that. That's
If you have any stories about superglue, feel free to enter it into our Facebook. Post up about your superglue disasters. James, do you have a first aid kit in your hobby room?
No, is the short answer. I don't have a dedicated first aid kit. I do have plasters. I have got some somewhere.
Do they have dinosaurs on them or airplanes? Or
Oh, no. These are builder type.
Oh, cars.
The fabric type.
Oh.
Yes. Do you have...
Boring.
Well, yeah, pretty much. The sort that absorb any fluid that goes anywhere near it. So probably not the best thing to use, if I'm honest, because obviously if I'm utilising a fluid for thinning or cleaning the airbrush or something like that, yeah, they run the risk. But generally I would wear gloves when doing that anyway. So, but yeah, no, that's the only first aid I have in here. However, I'm very close to a dedicated first aid box, which is in my kitchen, which is a dozen steps away from where I am right now.
So that has like eye baths and bandages and all that kind of.
And I can cover at least a dozen people's eyes because I've got that many eye bandages.
So if you had a potato that accidentally had a cut, then you'd be sorted.
Oh, yeah. I'd be all over it with an eye bandage straight away.
Yeah, I would recommend it. Everybody in their hobby room has a first aid kit because of safety. Because you never know when you might need it or, someone who's visiting your house might need it or a family member.
I'm curious, as you've asked the question about the first aid box, do you have a fire extinguisher handy?
I have one in my kitchen for, fires, but I don't have one anywhere else.
It was something that actually a friend brought up and asked the question, do I have a fire extinguisher? And I poo-pooed the idea completely. Oh, don't be so silly, what would I want that for? And actually thinking about it, he's right. is absolutely right, because I have a computer in here, I have a compressor in here, and in this room are a great deal of flammable stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be sensible to have a fire extinguisher. We'll do the fire training in another episode.
Fire safety in your hobby.
But just obviously be aware that there are many different types of fire extinguishers, and some do not work in some situations. So a little bit of homework is required.
Powder ones and CO2 and foam and water.
Hopefully we've not made you go to sleep completely at this point. The last thing in which to leave you with is storage.
Yeah.
One of the best ways to prevent accidents is to ensure that your products of toxicity or flammability are stored correctly. So if you've got the room in your hobby space for a lockable, fire-resistant cupboard, for two reasons, obviously for the fire side of things, but also if you've got little ones, you don't want your little ones coming in and unscrewing easily opened caps on a fluid in which they shouldn't be ingesting.
Well, when I used to do the model making with the kids who were really young, I'd always make sure everything went back away into a box, and that box went onto the desk, and so they had nothing out on the side they could grab. And they know they've had it drilled into them from a very young age. You don't touch daddy's stuff. You don't touch daddy's paint. For your homework, if you want to draw a picture of a sunset, you do not pick up daddy's Vallejo. Start pouring it onto your paper, and you certainly don't pick up any tools without asking. That's another part of your storage, isn't it?
The idea of talking about this isn't just about your safety, it's about your loved one's safety, but also on top of that, remember, if you've got pets, they're the same. Don't go and have your lunch and leave a container of airbrush cleaner. The reason I mention that is there are times where I have left my hobby room door open. My cat comes in, generally it's well behaved. However, there is the occasion where I'll be sat in the front room and she'll trot with a paintbrush in her mouth because she's been up on the side and she's played with whatever's there. Luckily, I've never had an occasion where she's been ill from anything she has touched. The same as your bits of sprue. Just remember, if you've got pets, while you're cutting away and sanding your sprue and resin, just remember to tidy that up properly, because any ingesting of that, it is going to cause some harm, whether it be a small piece or whether it be dust. It's all harmful. The same with resin. We've not mentioned it. Bear what we said about protection in inhalation, etc., when you're playing with resin, because resin is lethal. It causes a great deal of harm.
Incredibly toxic to humans is resin dust. Be careful, everybody out there. Look after yourselves. Don't get hurt, and be safe.
Be safe, be clever, be wise.
Be back next time when we have another podcast.
Indeed.
Because we want the listeners. So don't hurt yourself and be in hospital.
If you hurt yourself, make sure someone tunes in next week.
Yeah, on your behalf.
Safety must be our top priority. Protecting yourself and those around you means for a happy and healthy activity. We should feel duty-bound to not take risks with something as precious as our own health.
It's not always about your mask. I'm going to go look up about superglue. You have been listening to Just Making Conversation
with James Skiffins
and Malcolm Childs. Follow us on Facebook, where we post photos, updates and other nonsense. Just let us know what you are making and what your thoughts are on the conversation on this episode. We have to thank our supporters, who we dearly appreciate. Please support us in any way you can by sharing to Facebook or supporting us on our patreon.com. Next time, we will be just making conversation about model shows.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.